Thank you for joining us today on this lovely Saturday. I'll start with some introductions. I'm Melissa. I'm the junior planner in the Climate Action Plan team. That's Marisa, who's also in the Climate Action Plan team, and then Lindsay with the Energy team. We're all part of the Sustainability and Mobility Department. We're happy you were able to join us today for this workshop. This is the last workshop in the Our Climate, Our Future Library series that we have been working for the last couple months with Jacqueline from the library and other library staff to put together for you all. So today's topic is going to be about energy, the rise of clean energy, and why it matters. So a little overview of today's workshop. Marisa is going to start by talking about the city's work in climate action and climate equity and why that matters. And then Lindsay is going to be talking about the city's upcoming REACH code, as well as the decarbonization work in buildings and vehicles. And then we'll wrap it off with a little interactive engagement. And now I'll pass it over to Marisa.
Thank you, Melissa. Definition of terms for those people who may not be familiar. So greenhouse gases are gases in the Earth's atmosphere that trap heat and cause the entire planet to warm gradually. So this warming disrupts weather patterns, that the ones that we're accustomed to, and they increase our risk for extreme weather events such as heat waves, droughts, and flooding. So we're already experiencing these extreme weather events today, and they will occur with greater frequency and intensity unless we do something to change course. So climate action is about working toward reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that we produce, and that will improve our overall quality of life. So the city of San Diego has adopted the goal of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2035, which means that we want to get to the point where we're balancing the amount of greenhouse gases we release into the atmosphere every year with the amount of greenhouse gases that we can actually absorb by things like trees or wetlands or other technological means. This graph actually shows the amount of greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere by the city of San Diego every year. So on this axis, you're looking at time. So we're starting at 2015, going out to 2050. These dots here are showing where we are right now in terms of annual release of greenhouse gases. So these dots are showing us now. And then these wedges are showing the reductions that we're hoping to accomplish by climate action. So this first blue wedge are reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that we expect to see through federal and state actions. This red wedge are reductions that we expect to see from local SANDAG policies and actions. And the rest of these are things that the city is hoping to reduce via their climate action work. So you'll notice that down here, this big green wedge, if we do all the things that we have planned in the Climate Action Plan today, we still can't get down to that net zero where we're totally balanced. So this green wedge is like the extra amount of GHG emissions that we're going to have to deal with by some new means that we haven't necessarily figured out yet, but we're hoping to work that out as we go. So the city's climate action plan actually works to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by category. So you can think of the different types of things that release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and we have developed a strategy to deal with each of those types of categories. So, for example, strategy 3, mobility and land use, is us trying to deal with all of the emissions that come from vehicles, cars and trucks, and driving around San Diego or moving around San Diego. Strategy 4, for example, the circular economy and clean communities, deals with all of the actions having to do with waste reduction. So recycling, all of the new composting that we're starting to see rolled out to different neighborhoods, ways of capturing gases released by our landfills and by other wastewater treatment facilities. Today, we're going to learn about strategy 1, which is removing the emissions that come about from building operations. So things like using natural gas appliances, your heating system, your air conditioning, anything like that. And Lindsay is going to talk to us about that today. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about climate equity and why it's important in the context of the city's climate action plan. So first, the city acknowledges that historically, people of color here in San Diego have not had equal access to resources and opportunities. This map shows the level of access to opportunities such as clean air, clean water, affordable transportation, healthy food, things like that, in communities across San Diego. You can see which communities, the ones in blues and darker blues, have less access than other communities in San Diego. Today, these marginalized communities are the ones who are also suffering the first effects of climate change, such as heat waves and poor air quality. So how's the city going to address climate equity? We want to address these inequities by focusing resources such that everybody fairly shares the benefits and burdens of climate action. So this graphic over here actually kind of illustrates the difference between equality and equity. So in the first version, equality, you provide the same resources to everyone regardless of their need. That may not actually help them to equally access the resources they want to or need to have. The second version, which is equitable distribution of resources, means that you give everybody help according to what they need in order to access what they need to be able to have healthy and productive lives. So the city is trying to move from an equality-based model to an equity-based model where we're providing some extra support for communities that haven't got that support in the past. So the ways that we're doing this is, first of all, we developed the Climate Equity Index, is what you could see on that previous map. And the idea here is until you understand where the pattern is of the inequities in San Diego, you can't really address them. So we developed a way that would allow us to visualize which communities in the region needed more help than other communities. And we're hoping to be able to move resources to those communities to make this better. We're also working with a climate equity working group. So this is a working group of community organizations. They focus on environmental justice or they serve a community of concern. We meet regularly with this group to address their concerns, find out what would be important in their neighborhoods. We also do a lot of community engagement. We did this with the development and implementation of the Climate Action Plan. So we took a lot of feedback from people in communities all across San Diego to find out what it is that they felt that they needed in their own neighborhoods and not just what we thought would be a good idea for services and resources. And then the Climate Equity Fund is something that is tied directly to our Climate Equity Index. So this is a pot of money that we have that we can spend on improvement projects, specifically in communities of concern. I think we actually have $11 million approximately for this upcoming fiscal year, and we're just now finishing up the decision about which projects are going to get that extra boost of funding. This is actually supplementary funding, so it isn't like funding to do a project from scratch. The idea here is if you can identify a project in a community concern that needs just a little boost to get it to the finish line, this is where the Climate Equity Fund goes. And again, it's supposed to be focused in communities of concern, so those neighborhoods who haven't had those resources before will get those resources now. All right, so now I'm going to pass it along to Lindsay to talk about decarbonization in the REACH code, which is all strategy one.
I'm Lindsay Hawes. I'm the Municipal Energy Program Manager with the Sustainability and Mobility Department, and we're going to talk about decarbonization and some REACH code information. All right, so pop quiz for the folks in the audience. Does anyone have an idea what decarbonization is, what it means? Any guesses? All right, it's a pretty straightforward term, even though it sounds a little wonky. It just means to remove carbon from a system. And as we think about the activities that we partake in every day, if we think about the systems and the technologies that we use every day, can anyone offer up an example of where we might be using carbon in our lives? Driving, I heard. That's exactly right. Driving is a big source of carbon. We also, as Marisa alluded, are using carbon in our homes when we heat our homes. Typically, those are our heaters are fed by natural gas. Our dryers that we use to dry our clothing, and our water heaters, and our stoves and ovens are often fed with natural gas. And even bigger, larger scale, the electricity that comes to our homes via the grid that we plug all of our devices into is generated in large part by natural gas at a power plant that burns natural gas to generate electricity. So natural gas runs deep in every aspect of our day-to-day. And in the city of San Diego, our goal is to eliminate all of that. Not eliminate, but drastically reduce the amount of gasoline that we are using each day to get around town, and then very large part, reduce, almost eliminate the natural gas that we are burning in our buildings. We also want to be able to provide 100% renewable electricity so that when we are plugging our devices and our appliances into our outlets in our homes and in our buildings, the electricity that is fueling those systems is coming from 100% renewable sources, things like solar, wind power, and no longer being generated by natural gas. We now have San Diego Community Power, which is an energy provider here in San Diego, and they have a 100% renewable product for sale. And we're hoping that eventually that product is available in a large enough part to support every citizen in San Diego, all the customers of San Diego Community Power. So we want to take this decarbonization all the way. I guess one of the tactics of decarbonization is electrification. So again, switching away from natural gas and over to an electric source for all of our current natural gas burning systems and appliances. So you'll hear me use that term electrification as well. They're somewhat interchangeable, decarbonization and electrification. All right, so again, let's thinking about the way natural gas is used in our buildings. We've got all of those systems that I mentioned, heating our homes, heating our water, drying our clothing. We see a lot of negative aspects of burning natural gas. We've got volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, that are emitted every single time we turn on our gas burner on our stove. Particulate matter, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. The list goes on and on of the negative air quality impacts associated with burning natural gas. So one tip, if you are using natural gas at your stovetop and you're just boiling a pot of water or cooking some eggs, use your exhaust fan. Always turn that exhaust fan on if you're going to be turning on your natural gas burners on your stovetop. 100%, please use that use that exhaust fan to help eliminate some of these negative air quality emissions from the inside of your home. And again, another option is electrification, replacing our gas burning systems with electric alternatives. When it comes to heating our water, electric heat pumps are a fantastic alternative that are readily available on the market. And one of the market transformation aspects of transitioning to electric heat pump water heaters is working with plumbers to make sure that they have those technologies available in inventory as they go out and respond to water heater replacements or repairs, and starting to talk with their customers about the option for a heat pump water heater. Electric dryers are also a great option that are widely available, and those actually operate via a heat pump system as well. In the kitchen, electric and induction stovetops are a fantastic option, and those are becoming much more popular. Induction cooking is such a cool technology. The stovetop is completely cool to the touch. You can have your burner on super high, you can touch it, you can put paper on top of it, will not burn. It is, the technology relies on magnetism, so you have to use a special pot, not special, many pots on the market and pans already are equipped with steel that will basically accept the magnetism and get hot, but without being hot to any other surface. So fantastic technology and really safe, and again, without those negative air quality emissions. And then for space heating, we also have heat pumps, again, readily available. And again, part of the market transformation there is working with our heating and ventilation and air conditioning contractors so that they can start to promote that technology with their customers and get those systems into our homes and our businesses. And I will say that I have a heat pump heating system, a heat pump water heating system, and a heat pump dryer at home. And I love all three of them. They are fantastic technologies. My next retrofit is to an induction stovetop. at which point my entire home will be all electric, and I'll be leading by example as best I can. All right, so again, talking a little bit about clean electricity generation here in this little first circle. With San Diego Community Power, we are so fortunate to be able to access 100% renewable energy if we want to opt up to that product from our local utility provider. And utilities across the state of California and ideally across the country are starting to transition to source more renewable energy in their electric mix that they are feeding into the grid, so that as we plug in our systems and our appliances, the amount of natural gas or coal or other fossil fuel sources in our electricity mix is going down. And we're seeing an influx of renewables into the electricity grid mix, especially here in California and here in San Diego, thanks to San Diego Community Power. And then again, shifting away from gas systems to electric systems, we're seeing better air quality, reduced rates of asthma and other air quality, poor air quality health conditions. I will say there was a op-ed in the Union Tribune just last Friday, not yesterday, but a week ago, that was written by a pediatrician, and I believe she is a chair of a local organization or committee around improving air quality related to electrification, and she threw out some fantastic statistics about the benefits of electrification. If I recall correctly, she stated that for folks who are subject to bad air quality, especially those in our communities of concern and the marginalized communities that Marisa spoke of, their rates of asthma and other ailments related to negative or poor air quality are significantly higher, as are the costs of dealing with those ailments. And so when you start to factor in the costs of the medical care required to treat some of these negative impacts of poor air quality, we really start to see the cumulative effects of burning greenhouse gas or burning fossil fuels and generating these greenhouse gas emissions. Another benefit is good paying jobs. The transition away from natural gas and toward all electric systems is going to require some significant upgrades to the infrastructure, our electric infrastructure here in San Diego and across our entire country. We've got to increase the ability for our electric wires to transmit more electricity to our homes and to our buildings, as we're beginning to increase the amount of electric demand that we are pulling from the grid. Also, as we shift to electric vehicles, by and large, we're starting to charge those cars and we need more electricity. So we're talking about improving the electric transmission and distribution system, by and large, across the big electric grid, and then also increasing the size of our own electric panels in our homes and in our buildings. Because if you think about an electric panel, it's kind of like, I like to think of it along the lines of like water. If you have a small pipe, there's only so much water that you can get from the city, from the street to use for all of the water end uses in your home. And at some point, as you need more water, you've got to increase the circumference of that pipe. Similarly, that's what we're going to need to do with electricity through upgrades and increases to the sizes of our electricity panels in our homes and our buildings. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the climate action plan, just to bring it back to what the city of San Diego is doing to proliferate electrification and decarbonization. Marisa talked a little bit about the CAP, the Climate Action Plan, and a couple of the strategies that are addressing things like mobility and waste reduction and composting. So I'm going to talk about strategies 1 and 2. Strategy 1 is decarbonization of the built environment. And so our goal is by 2035, phasing out 90% of natural gas from our existing buildings and phasing out 100% of natural gas in municipal facilities. And so that's my job. My job and that of my team is to address all of the city's owned and occupied facilities, places like this library, fire stations, recreation centers, eliminate natural gas, shift to electric systems, deploy as much renewable energy and battery storage as we can so that we can generate renewable, clean energy on site, store it in batteries, and then discharge it when we need it, when the grid can't support our needs, and also to help reduce our operating costs and spend our taxpayer dollars more wisely. In strategy 2, access to clean and renewable energy, that's where the clean electric grid comes into play. Our goal is to have 100% renewable or greenhouse gas-free power for all San Diegans, or at least those who are purchasing their power from San Diego Community Power. And right now, that product is available if you wanted to opt up and purchase that. And then we also have some goals around shifting our city fleet of vehicles to electric vehicles. And so again, my team's job is to make sure that all of the electric infrastructure is in place so that as we increase our electric demand, we actually have enough and can keep our cars powered up and all of our buildings powered up as well. And then when we look at that wedge graph that Marisa was showing us earlier, you'll notice that strategy 1 and 2, which are comprised of the yellow and the green wedges, actually comprise the biggest chunk of greenhouse gas emissions from the Climate Action Plan. So this is an important set of strategies that I am excited to be working on. Tying it back to equity. As Marisa mentioned, and as we've been talking about, our communities of concern, communities that have been subject to systemic racism and marginalization throughout decades and decades of our history, centuries of our history, are disproportionately affected by this poor air quality and lack of access to resources. And so as we start to electrify, especially in the municipal space, which again is my area of focus, we want to be able to bring electrification resources to these communities, make sure that they're receiving, the benefits, whether that's through incentives and rebates or just allowing, the city to come in and retrofit these facilities and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase or improve our air quality, and start to really see some of those benefits. On the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing in city facilities to really push the envelope and get out ahead of electrification, and then I'll shift to what we're going to start to see in the community. So one of the projects that we've been working on here at the city, or a project that wrapped up last year or so, was a retrofit of a couple of libraries to zero net energy. So as Marisa mentioned, zero net energy just means that like on an annual basis, you're generating as much clean energy to offset the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that you're releasing into the air. And so in this project, we chose 3 public libraries that included the Point Loma Library, the Malcolm X Library, and the Kearny Mesa Library. We went in and retrofitted a bunch of lighting and other systems in the building to reduce the amount of energy that the buildings were using. We made them more energy efficient. Those facilities all have solar panels deployed, so the goal was to generate as much renewable energy as we can to meet the demand of that energy at that facility on an annual basis. We improved the ambiance in those buildings. The lighting is now wonderful. The stacks are a lot brighter. Folks can actually, have an ability to see better in the stacks and see the books that they're looking for. And then we also have some nifty dashboards in the lobbies of those facilities where you can see the real-time performance of those buildings. You can see how much energy is being generated by the panels in their parking lots or on their roof, and see how that compares to the energy that's being consumed. And you can see historical trends and data, cost savings, you name it. So that was an exciting project that allowed us to learn a lot of lessons that we then want to deploy across other facilities and then share lessons with homeowners and building owners like yourselves. Another project is related to renewable microgrids. Does anyone have a guess of what a microgrid is? Like another wonky energy term. If we think about the grid, the electricity grid, it's what we're all plugged into to operate our day-to-day, right? So that's a macro, big grid. If we think about a microgrid, it's just that same thing, but on a much, much smaller scale. So in this case, we're deploying a single facility microgrid, and the way a microgrid, or what makes a microgrid so cool, is that if the larger grid were to go down, if we were to have a power outage, these facilities are equipped with energy generation, so a way to generate energy, and then also a way to store that energy such that they can operate and continue to operate when the larger grid goes down. You basically flip a switch, and the grid is sort of centralized and shut off from the bigger grid. We've got renewable energy generation, we've got solar panels, we've got batteries, and again, we're storing that clean renewable energy in batteries, and then dispersing that energy from the batteries to the facility to power it for as long as the sun is shining, and as long as we keep our electric demands fairly low. So we're deploying these renewable microgrids at 8 critical facilities, facilities that we want to make sure are operating if the grid goes down. These facilities are like fire stations, police stations, and a couple of recreation centers that could serve as shelters or emergency distribution centers, again, during an emergency or a long-term outage or, God forbid, a natural disaster. And one of the cool things about these is the ability to increase the resiliency of the communities that they serve. So resiliency is another kind of wonky term, but it really just means the ability to continue to operate through a disruption, to weather a storm, if you will. And so again, these 8 facilities are designed to support the community. If we do have a big outage, or a disaster, this is a place that you could go to plug in your devices so that you can stay connected. You could refrigerate your medication if that's something that is a critical resource for you. And our goal is to, again, learn lessons from these 8 systems that we're deploying so that we can proliferate that type of technology across all of the critical facilities in San Diego, and again, share those lessons with our citizens. All right, the next one is a mobile EV charging program that we are implementing, which is basically equipping parking lots with these standalone EV charging systems that are equipped with solar and battery storage. So it's, again, kind of like a microgrid. It's a standalone system that doesn't have to plug into the larger grid, and an electric vehicle can come and charge up at these cool solar tree looking things, and just pull that renewable energy direct from the sun or direct from the batteries and keep their cars charged up if the grid were to go down. And another cool aspect of this project is that Beam, the maker of this technology, is a local San Diego company. Last but not least, on the municipal front, we have recently adopted a policy. It's called our Zero Emissions Municipal Buildings and Operations Policy. The acronym is ZEMBOP. It's just to give it a little bit of a fun way to keep it fresh in your mind. And that is requiring all municipal facilities that are built new to be built without any fossil fuels. So they will not get a natural gas hookup. All of the systems in place will be electric. They'll be super energy efficient. They'll be equipped with solar and battery storage. They'll have electric vehicle charging for fleet vehicles that might park at those facilities on a regular basis. And then they would also be equipped with electric vehicle chargers for the public as well. And as we go in and retrofit all of our existing facilities, we've got about 400 facilities in about 10 years to get them all to electric. As we go in and retrofit, as our furnaces or boilers die, as our water heaters die, this policy requires that we replace them with all electric alternatives, and we start to electrify and decarbonize all of those facilities and get the fleet charging in place so that as our fleet moves from combustion vehicles to electric vehicles, we have adequate charging in place to support that transition. All right, I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit now towards what electrification might look like in the community and some of the things we're doing to, again, push the envelope there. Starting with this little, I'm going to walk you through, I'm going to add a few little boxes to this slide. It's more or less a table. So our climate action plan, again, sets the goal to remove 90% of gas consumption from all buildings citywide by 2035. And we're addressing that in different types of facilities, using different types of policies and pieces of regulation. So again, in our municipally owned and occupied facilities, we're relying on that policy, ZEMBOP, and that policy lays out the rules and regulations for how we're going to get to all electric in the municipal space. In the private space, homes and buildings that are owned by homeowners and, private commercial building owners, offices, you name it, we're going to be releasing a REACH code, and that will apply to new construction of privately owned buildings. And then we're going to eventually release a building performance standard that would apply electrification requirements to existing buildings across the city. We're a little ways away from that building performance standard, but we're right on the cusp of releasing the REACH code that would apply to new construction of private facilities. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. A REACH code is basically a code that would be enforced by development services. So anytime you go and get a permit, your building permit would have to meet the requirements of this code, just like it already does, right? We have a statewide codes, and the state of California actually has fairly ambitious energy codes that apply to all buildings that are built in the state of California. A REACH code allows a local jurisdiction, like a city or a county, local government, to go above and beyond what the state requires in the statewide code. So we're reaching beyond the minimum standards set by the state, and that is where that REACH term comes from. And there are a couple of different ways you can go about developing a REACH code, and there are actually many, many REACH codes already in place across the state of California that are specific to electrification and decarbonization. There are codes up in the Bay Area, pretty much up and down the state. I think there are 70 different REACH codes, and some of them ban natural gas. Some of them require all electric. Some of them require only electric water heaters, for example. So they can be very broad or they can be very specific, but anytime you're exceeding what the state requires at a minimum, you're implementing a REACH code. And for the city of San Diego, our goal is to, over the next couple of months, take a REACH code to City Council and have that starting to be enforced in January of 2024. And again, this would apply to new construction. So anytime a developer or a homeowner goes out and wants to build a building from scratch, that new building would need to be all electric. And again, no gas hookup. And all of the systems and appliances in that building would need to be fueled by electricity. It also requires some EV readiness. So if it's a commercial facility, parking spaces that are EV ready, meaning there's conduit in place under the parking lot that would allow for easy installation of an EV charger to support an electric vehicle. So if you're a developer, this is important. If you're an existing homeowner or renter, probably not a very big deal right now. And in a few years, we'll start to talk more about an existing building standard that would apply to the existing homes and buildings out there. But we're not there quite yet. All right, so what does this REACH code mean for you? All of the benefits that we've already went over related to decarbonization, we're hoping to see from this REACH code. So cleaner air, improved public health, less climate pollution, lower utility bills, and more affordable housing. Because in fact, there are studies that have been, cost-benefit analyses that have been performed that show building a new building from scratch without natural gas and equipped with solar is actually cheaper, not only at the time of construction, but also definitely through the life of the operation of that building, much cheaper than building and operating with natural gas. So we're gonna see cost savings from this as well. Pop quiz, who's ready? This is one of my last slides, so we're almost done here. Which one of these appliances in your home uses natural gas? A microwave, a dryer, or a fridge? A, B, or C? Any guesses? All right, I hear some B's. Good answer. You guys have been paying attention. The REACH code will apply to which buildings? Multifamily residential, commercial, single family, or all of the above? Does anyone know? All of the above, as long as they are being built new construction of all types. All right. So the very last slide is a request for some engagement from the crowd. So if you're willing, I would love to talk a little bit more about the resilience element of the work that we're doing, especially here in the municipal space. So again, we're deploying microgrids. We are trying to bring resources to our communities so that they can weather power outages, weather disasters in a way that is renewable and increases the safety and resiliency of these communities. So we are looking at and seeking grant funding, actually, to deploy what we're calling energy resilience hubs. And these would be just a hub located at an existing community center, a place that already serves the community, that folks are used to going to get resources, but that would be equipped with a microgrid and other resources that the community might need during a disaster or an emergency. And so right now we're just trying to gather some information about what types of facilities would serve as an energy resilience hub. So think for a moment, if you would, and let me know if there was a grid outage or a wildfire or some other disaster or emergency and the power went out in your home and you needed to refrigerate your medication, or you needed a place to sleep because it was just too hot and you needed something cool, or you needed to go plug in your cell phone so that you could call your mom, over on the East Coast or something like that, to let her know you're safe. Where would you go? What's the first place that pops into your mind of where you would go to get some of these resources in your community?
Thinking back during the pandemic, I know YMCA's served as community centers, not only to get vaccines, but to get information, resources.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. For those who might not have heard, during the pandemic, we saw the YMCA offer a lot of resources, vaccines and other resources. So YMCA is a great option. Thank you.
I will say in Florida, it was always high schools.
High schools, excellent.
Hurricane evacuation, always high schools.
Excellent. Melissa, would you mind writing some of these down? That was with the whiteboard before. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got YMCA, we've got high schools, which again have those gymnasiums that can serve as shelters. Great suggestion, thank you. Any other suggestions from the crowd?
This might be a little bit biased. Libraries. Libraries serve as access points.
All right, excellent. I'm hearing libraries. And yes, here in San Diego, our libraries serve as cooling centers. And, that we've established our libraries as cooling centers specifically to provide those resources. So yeah, adding this energy resilience hub sort of feature to our existing cooling centers is a great option. Any other suggestions? In some of the other workshops, we heard things like churches or places of worship, fire stations. What else did we hear last week? Oh yeah, stadiums, that was an interesting one. And the airport as well, that's right. So we have a lot of great options for places to site these energy resilience hubs. And hopefully we get some grant funding. If not, this is still a program that we want to be able to roll out with deployment of microgrids and other resources for our communities. All right, that was my last slide, so I'm going to hand it back over to wrap up and talk about steps you can take to contribute to clean energy and reduced energy.
So now that we heard about Lindsay's presentation about electrification, we now wanted to share some steps that everyone can take in their everyday lives to be more energy efficient. And one of them, the first one, is pretty easy, just turning off the lights when you exit a room. I feel like everyone has done this at some point in their lives, but just always keep in mind, like if you leave a room, make sure all the lights are off. The second one is turning off or unplugging any electrical appliances that aren't being used. A lot of appliances, even when they are turned off, but because they are plugged in, they still consume energy. So just unplugging it will help with that, and it can also help with your electric bill. So anything like a blender or a toaster or a PlayStation, anything like that, if it's not going to be used for that day or for a couple of days, it's better to just unplug it. And then replacing older light bulbs with more energy efficient ones like LED bulbs. And then lastly, there's different kinds of incentives, tax credits and rebates going on right now that are being offered by different programs like SDG&E, like the state or other federal incentives and tax credits that can help you go like more electric, like the one mentioned here is the one for electric vehicles with incentive program by SDG&E. And then in the copies of the slides, the last couple pages show a bunch of other resources and incentives to go electric for like vehicles or even for panels or other resources like SDG&E's like assistance with your bill or other like housing or like tenant protection and, or other resources if needed. All right, and that concludes our presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us here today.